please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear.
I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute.
That I will faithfully execute.
The office of President of the United States.
The office of President of the United States.
And will, to the best of my ability.
And will, to the best of my ability.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Justice. Thank you so much.
That was President Obama sworn in just a few minutes ago in the White House Blue Room. He's officially started his second term. He used a Bible that his late father-in-law gave to his mother-in-law. Of course, she is the first grandmother, and she lives in the White House. Chief Justice John Roberts administered the oath just as he did in 2009. The swearing-in was done today because of the 20th Amendment that requires it to happen by noon on January 20th, no matter what day of the week it is. It will be repeated publicly tomorrow because tradition dictates that the full inaugural not take place on a Sunday. Let's bring back my panel here. Karen Finney, Doris Kearns Goodwin, Congressman Tom Cole, and Jonathan Martin. So we were talking a little bit about the second term agenda, and one of the things before we get into it, we asked biggest accomplishments, biggest failures in our last poll. Number 1 and number 2 were bringing the troops home from Iraq, and number 2 was bin Laden. On the biggest failures, number 1 was not righting the economy yet, and number 2 was spending. Probably predictable answers there, but the thing with bin Laden, I throw that out there, there's a lot of things you anticipate in your agenda, Karen, and then there's things that come up, like the Arab Spring, that you can't.
Sure, absolutely. And I think that's part of the lesson that you learn in a first term, that you come in, you've campaigned on a set of ideas, you think you've got these policies ready to go, and then something happens that you could not have foreseen, and that you put some things off to the side. And I think, and certainly something like getting bin Laden, I mean, that was something the president talked about wanting to do, but nobody knew if that was actually going to be possible. So that was obviously an important accomplishment. Now with the Arab Spring, that is, I mean, what happens in that region
of the
world?
Fallout
in lots of places. I mean, it is falling
Algeria,
fallout to fallout.
Mali,
exactly.
Libya, all related
and
to the single most consequential decision he made as President of the United States, pushing out Mubarak.
Right. That's right.
Nobody is still sure to this day whether that was the right call, Doris.
Well, it shows you that the world is out there and that a president doesn't control. As powerful as he is when he takes that oath today, what happens around the world is something he can't control. I mean, think about who would have imagined in 1937 that FDR would have a third and fourth term because World War II would break out in Europe. I mean, he knew things were happening with Hitler. He was nervous about that, but you could never have predicted that. Well, so you've got to but that doesn't mean that you don't keep moving forward domestically. Right. I mean, I think, I've said this before, but Eleanor Roosevelt said you can't strengthen democracy abroad without strengthening it at home. And you can't let that world outside sort of thin your ambitions at home.
Having served in the Clinton administration, I mean, certainly in the first term, that was part of what you're learning how to do, right, is deal with the crises of the day. Yes, there were plenty, but then continue to move an agenda forward. And again, by the second term, you have a much better sense of how to do that.
Well, go ahead, Tom.
Well, just politically, though, these things, as important as they are, frankly, don't move domestic politics. I mean, I think of George Herbert Walker Bush, who was enormously successful in not just the Gulf War, but in handling his Arab Spring crisis, the unraveling of the old Soviet empire, and doing it peacefully in Europe. I mean, no major war. Amazing achievement, didn't even get him reelected. So, I mean, these things, I would be worried as a political consultant if my top 2 accomplishments were foreign policy and my top 2 problems were domestic.
Right, it does say, Jonathan, 6 weeks ago, when we talk about the second term agenda, we would have talked